Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are going to finally sort out those doors on the Frankenhauler. Alright guys, but before we get into it today, I want to talk a bit about the ANTHBOT Genie 3000 robot lawnmower. Now, the Genie 3000 is actually fantastic. It can cut up to 3,000 square meters of lawn, and it has kept my lawn looking beautiful for, as I said, the last month or so. I've been using it constantly and I can't turn back. It has saved me so much time. So there were some questions when I was talking about the Genie last time, and one of the big ones that kept coming up was, does it have a catcher and what happens to all of the clippings? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't have a catcher, and it's not an issue. You can set up the Genie with the app on your phone, and I've set mine up to run every other day. So basically, you only get 2 days of grass growth between mows, as opposed to when you would normally do it, you wait until the grass is long enough to bother and then you go and do it, and you've got a whole bunch of clippings. Because the Genie is just going without you even thinking about it all the time, the clippings are so minute that they just don't really exist, and they just disappear into the lawn, and it's not an issue. Some people mentioned pets, and my pets have no issue. They've sort of gotten used to the Genie over the time I've had it and don't really pay much attention. It's nice and quiet. It does discover a dog egg every now and then, and it just goes over it, and it's not a big issue. It doesn't spread it everywhere, and it's all just left as is. Now, the Genie is safe for pets and kids. It has 4 cameras all the way around that show where it is and will stop it from running things over and all the rest of it. Assembly is super simple. Just screw down the base plate, stick in the GPS stake, and connect up all the wires. It's that easy. Now, if you have a steeper lawn, it can handle up to a 45-degree grade, so 24-degree slope. Some people asked about the edges, and no, it does not get all the way to the edges, but because it stays on top of the rest of the lawn looks great for ages. And then once every sort of 2 or 3 weeks, I'll just go around and quickly do the edges, and it makes my life so much easier, and the lawn looks fantastic all the time. You can see my 15-year-old golden retriever doesn't pay it any attention at all now. So go and check out the ANTHBOT Genie. I'll put a link in the description below, and like always, help out the companies that help out the channel, and I'm very happy with it. So it gives me plenty more time to get back in the shed, so let's get back there. All right guys, welcome back, and those who have been following know that this is my home garage that I build these crazy vehicles in, and this is the Ferrari, my 1973 Alfa Romeo GTV with a Ferrari 360 V8 in, and this is the Frankenhauler, which is my 1954 Ford F600 truck that is actually on a Toyota Coaster bus chassis. If you missed the last episode, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and as always, do the things like subscribe and comment. It all helps out that crazy algorithm. Last week I was working on the Ferrari and doing a bunch of things, particularly working on the indicators to get them to self-cancel. A couple of comments on the indicators. There were a bunch of people who were talking about the fact that they're coming from a Mini, and the Mini was originally a positively earthed vehicle, and this switch is now in a negatively earthed car, and it makes zero difference at all. It's a switch. It's just connecting 2 contacts together, and the power either runs through it or it doesn't. So being positively earthed or negatively earthed has zero bearing on how a switch works, and that's not a problem. There are also a lot of comments about the fact that if I'm playing with the indicator switch and making a whole new system, why don't I move it over to the right-hand side and give me space for the lights on the left? This car originally had the indicator on the left, and also every one of my cars already has the indicator on the left, including the truck I drive at work has the indicator on the left. So I don't want to have a car that doesn't have it that way around. I'm very comfortable with the left-hand indicator. For those in other like left-hand drive countries, right-hand drive cars seem to have a mix. Japanese cars often have them on the left, whereas a lot of our European imported cars have them on the right. Well, my cars are European. So yeah, that's how I'm used to it, and that's where I want it to stay. At the end of the week, I had a wiring issue and I was exhausted and couldn't work it out, and I just didn't want to have to spend the mental capacity on it. And I went in over the weekend, and actually it ended up, all the issue was that the horn wire going through the middle of the Boss kit, when I bolted the steering wheel on, I pinched the horn wire and shorted it out. And that horn is connected through to the motorbike PDM, which I'm not very happy with in this car. It doesn't work well in the car situation, and I will be replacing that with something from Link very soon. I've got a Link PDM to go into this car, which is going to transform a lot of my electrical gremlins. We'll get into that in another episode. But yeah, basically that was just a pinched wire, and I unpinched it, and now the indicators work beautifully, and I've already driven it, and they cancel just the way they're supposed to, and it's just a nice positive feel indicator rather than the sort of the wet noodle indicator that these cars have from the standard. They're just, it's not a very good feeling indicator. It's sloppy even when it's working the way it's supposed to. Yeah, it's not a good system. So that is much better. Very happy, simple, and we can move forward. So first thing I want to do this week is I want to actually finish it off. At the moment, I still have the remains of the tiny little mini stalk in the car, and I want to get it to be something more resembling what was in there originally. So we need to extend that stalk and then try and design and build a knob for the end of it. So first things first, I need to repair the wire that I crushed last week. So I had to remove the horn ring from the bottom, which is actually glued on, cut off the old wire and repair it, and then put it all back together again. I just used a small hammer to flatten out the horn ring, which obviously I had to mangle a bit to get it off, but that fixed it all. And now I'm moving on to the indicator stalk. I have got a piece of 6mm rod that I am drilling out the end of it on the lathe so that I can actually extend the mini stalk. Then I need to cut off the end of the mini stalk, and because I'm lazy, I didn't want to pull everything out, so I did it in the car. Alright, so you can see I turned down a piece of 6mm rod, which is about the same size as the rod for the lights, so that sort of works quite nicely, and I managed to drill it out and get it to sit on nicely onto the mini stalk. And now I have an indicator that sits in a nice spot to flick with my fingers on the steering wheel. And now all I need to do is I'll epoxy it onto the shaft and then 3D print up a bit of a knob to match this for the end. So a little bit of design and work on that, a bit of glue, and we have working indicators. I actually designed up in CAD and 3D printed this piece that will fit nicely onto that rod that I turned down earlier, and it sits on there nicely. The only issue I have is that it has all these layer lines in it, so it doesn't look the greatest. And in the back, where I had to print it flat like this, I tried other ways and it wouldn't hold, so it's got a lot of mess on the back. But there is a method that I've heard of for smoothing this stuff out, particularly ABS and ASA, using acetone. Basically just sitting it in a sealed container with acetone, and in theory it will just sort of smooth out and gradually melt the surface just enough to get that nice glossy finish that we want. So let's find a bath of acetone and see if we can make this a little bit smoother. So I don't want the piece in the acetone, I want it above and just let the vapor do the work. All of the acetone has evaporated. All right, and you can see here, it got melted and shiny on the bottom, but on the top it's very dry and just doesn't look that great. I think basically what I need to do is I need to seal the container better and try again Thankfully, it is super easy to recreate, and I just printed out another one here. So I will give it another go. I might try wiping it and stuff, but that will be for next week. All right, well, the Ferrari indicator is looking good. So now it's back onto the Frankenholer. And last time when I finished off, I've been working on these doors to get the doors to open and close with the Toyota latches and stuff like that. I know it's been a few episodes, but this is just what it takes to do things right and get it to work properly, and I'm quite happy with how they're going now. I need to finish off this side and then get the other side to match, and then we can start looking at other parts like maybe some rust and things like that. So first things first, let's pull this apart and see if we can strengthen up some of these internal pieces. So it's time to disassemble the door again and get ready to remake my little hinge panel. I used the old one as a template, and then I'm just cutting it out of 1.5mm steel plate just to make something a little bit more substantial for the vehicle. Drilling out the same pivots, and I'm happy that this is much sturdier than what was in there previously. Alright, so the previous little piece that my handle pressed on was this, and so it's got a little tab here, and I made it again out of 1.5mm steel plate. So this is just a bit thicker, a bit more robust piece. It's totally fine, to be honest. I just thought I may as well while I'm at it. And I also needed to make up a new spacer, so I made up a little bit of brass hexagonal stock and made up the spacer, so this can just bolt in there. It can be clamped in. It sits just proud, and that means that it will still be able to be bolted tight and still pivot, getting rid of the old one that I had that I sort of had cobbled together from two different bits. So let's reassemble and make sure it still all works, and then we can do the other side. All right, so next step is to get the lock to work. Now currently that is the lock there. It's moving in and out because the lock was next to the door handle, so you can sort of flick the lock open and closed. On this, that's how they've set this one up. But all these locks are basically the same with some few different brackets. So this one has this bracket here, this little 90-degree pivot you can see that works onto this, but that's actually turning this pivot here so it can just go up and down. So I need to remove this pivot and establish the lock up and down off of this pivot here. So let's remove and see if we can get something to work. So I start by cutting off that excess pivot, and then I need to work out how I'm going to attach the wire to make the lock function. So this hole that I needed to connect into was actually quite a bit larger than what the other holes are, and to fit the little plastic tab, I was going to go, okay, I was going to redesign this plastic tab in CAD and then 3D print it to fit the bigger hole. And then I woke up to myself and realized all I had to do was cut the other piece off of this, and I just welded it on top of where the other hole was. And now my little clip fits in there easily, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes, yeah, one thing will work, but there's something that'll be easier. And this time I found it before I went through a whole bunch of work that I didn't need to do. So now this will mount in the car, and I can actually activate the lock by pulling up and down, and this rod will now be able to come up and come through the door, and I can have a vertical little locking lug like most cars from sort of the 50s to the 80s. So now I have my locking wire set up. I need to drill a hole where I want the locking button to sit inside the truck, then bend the wire and feed it through to suit to make sure everything functions. All right, so this has been a lot of backwards and forwards, but we have a door that now works. I have an internal lock back there, that's locked, doesn't open, unlock, and it works like a Toyota lock should. And also with the key, so with the key I can lock it and unlock. And also I have an internal handle that will open and close the door. So this all finally does what it's supposed to do. So now I just need to do the same on the other side, and then we can move on to some other part of the truck, or maybe more of the doors. And then it's same again for the passenger side, just cutting out my new little locking pivot, just making it out of that 1.5mm steel plate to match what I've done on the driver's side. And then I need to make the locking wire, which is a little bit of playing around, as this lock is not identical to the one on the driver's side. Alright, so before I can finish up the passenger side, I actually only have one of these rails. I can't remember what happened to it. I've searched the place high and low, and I'm sure I must have had two, but everything on the passenger side was very rusty, so let's measure one up and build the window channel for the passenger side. So I'm sure you probably can buy these window channels aftermarket, but to be honest, I need to modify it anyway, so I may as well be making it from scratch, and I don't have to wait. And with the old guillotine and my brake, it's relatively straightforward to just make a basic channel the same as the driver's side, and also then make the lower mounting bracket. And with the lower bracket folded up, I just need to drill in the mounting holes, and then I need to go over and weld in some captive nuts into the back of it before I line everything up, make sure it matches in with the existing driver's side to use as a reference, and then just tack it all together. For the top mount, this is something that I modified heavily in the previous episode, as it is also the mount for the pivot for the door latch now. So again, as I needed to do this anyway, it's not worth trying to go and buy something new when you can just build it. And then it's just a matter of reinstalling it. Alright, well, I know you guys are well and truly sick of it now, but we have doors on both sides that are now working. I have a window rail that's going to work, and I also have a lock on the inside, so that will lock now and not open. Well, let's move on. Finally, I'm happy with my door latches, but I'm not finished with the doors. Now I need to remove them because they are rusty. Alright, so now I've got the locks and everything sorted. I've taken the doors off of the truck, and it's time to start tackling a bit of the rot that has crept into these doors. Now, mostly it's the passenger side. The driver's side is actually not too bad. There's a little patch I need to do on the bottom of the driver's side door, but the bottom of the passenger side door is rotted out inside and out. So I'll show you that now, and let's go through first of all and just start cleaning up the door, getting things looking a little bit prettier so that we can get it ready for paint, because the inside of the truck I want to be Mickey Mouse. So all of this around here is just sort of the dried bubbled rubber that was left on here. That's actually just a rubber seal. That's not that big of an issue, but this is where the issue lies. So this is all just eaten out completely all the way around along this bottom edge, whatever that is there. There's a rubber strip. That's all rotted out, and on the other side of the door, this is also, you know, got big holes in it, and it's completely rusted out. So this passenger door is particularly bad. It's also got this, it looks like probably a sound deadening paddle or something here. It sort of stops about there, and it's pretty much just sort of inside the door. It could actually just be tar that was sprayed inside this door opening. Either way, I'm going to scrape off what I can and sort of try and tidy it up a bit. First things first, let's clean this up and see what we can do about replacing some of these rusty bits. So I start by scraping off a lot of the congealed rubber that's on the sides of the door, and then using the patch panel I've got, I go through and start working out a plan for how much I need to actually repair on the door, as you don't have to use the whole panel. And then everything has fallen into a screaming heap because our daily driver, McCann, has just died. Alright, well, this is not something I wanted to be doing, but I have to stop on the Frankenholder at the moment because our daily driver, the only normal car we have, is my 2015 Porsche Macan, and it's currently not starting. It actually, I got a strong fuel smell yesterday, and it was very slow to start, and the fuel smell was terrible. And now it's not starting at all. It starts for a split, it like cranks for age. It just starts and then shuts out. So we need to find out what is wrong, because I can't play with the toys if the daily doesn't work.
So the most common place for these to fail is the fuel pump.
All right, well, that's slightly annoying, because I was totally expecting the top of the fuel pump here, which is underneath the back seat in the Macan, to be broken. Generally, this fitting here, it perishes and breaks, and it just gets a little pinhole in there and it leaks. And there is no leak. There is nothing, there is no issue there at all. So it's obviously not broken. That is not where my leak is coming from. Now, there is nothing dripping under the car, but there's a strong smell. So I have to investigate further, but this is not it. Damn it. All right, I managed to get it started and moved it back onto the hoist. And yeah, that's definitely found a leak. Wow.
Now let me just preface this by saying I do not normally work on this car. My daily drivers I usually leave. I can't stand modern cars with all the extra junk on them. It's such a pain to work on, and I'm happier to work on my projects and do my fabrication rather than doing this sort of tedious work, and particularly with jobs like this where nothing seems to be as simple as I hope.
So with a bit more diagnosis, I can see down here that there is actually a lot of fuel on the passenger side fuel rail. So there is a fuel injector, or the rail leaking itself. It's leaking a lot now. I'm not going to be able to get to this, and it's a public holiday, so I'm going to leave this for now and move back on to the Frankenhauler's doors.
Ah, much better. Much happier working on this old rusty junk than the new stuff with all of its complications that just don't need to be there. Happy to pay the mechanic to do that. So here you can see I've ground through the edge of the door skin. That's the easiest way to separate a door skin from the other panels, and taken off the bottom area, revealing a lot of mess and a bit of rust. And then I try and scrape off a lot of the tar that has been sprayed in through this door opening. And on this lower ledge, some of this door skin I'm going to keep, so I'm just going to peel it back for now, and then I can work out how much I'm going to replace later.
All right, so I have stripped this door back. I have scraped off some of this sound deadening, but to be honest, it's actually reasonably thick. It's just sound deadening, and it's not rusting underneath. It's quite solid. It's just got layers of ugly flaky paint on it. So I'll just keep flaking off some of the paint. It doesn't need to all be completely removed. You can see I've cut off this lower section now, and you've got this, there's this brace here that's quite thick that actually supports the door hinge. Now, to repair this, really, I'd have to remove the entire skin, and the fact is that there is holes in it. It's particularly bad down the bottom here, and there's some cracks here as well, but it's still super strong and super solid. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it with some POR to stop it from getting any worse. It's still rock hard, rock solid, and for this old truck, I think it will still last probably another 50 years like it is. The next thing is obviously that I've cut this bottom section off. I am going to replace the outer skin as well, or at least some of the outer skin. But for the inner, which is what I want to tackle first, I have a patch panel. Originally, I cut it off through this lower section here, which would mean it's going to be in this area is where the join will be. I want a nice big flat area where I can get the hammer and dolly underneath and panel beat it flat nicely. But looking at it, this has actually got some sort of dips and things in it here. I don't want to replace the whole panel because trying to join that up is going to be ugly and messy. But what I may do, what I'm thinking now, is I'm actually going to take it along this section here, because this part is still all good. All this metal here is all good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it along midway along this line here, go up and around this opening here, because there's a new one right here, and weld it on over the top and down the side, and that way I get rid of some of this extra muck that's just here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to trim up the patch exactly the way I want it, then I can inscribe onto the door, cut this out, and then tack the two together.
So now I've worked out where I'm going to make the join. I cut off the excess off of the patch panel. So I've got a nice, neat, clean join to work with. And then with the flap disc, I just go along and take the paint off of the edge of both sides so that I can get a nice, neat weld. And you can see here I can't actually get the patch to fit nicely, so I trim away more of the door, still short of the line of where I eventually want to trim it back to, just so that I can make sure I get the closest fit possible, because it's easy to cut it off, it's harder to put it back on. So here you can see the patch panel is fitting much nicer, and now I can scribe the edge and get the exact line I want to cut off.
Alright, so I've trimmed this line along here to match up, and I've got a good fit up all the way along there when I hold it in place. That's quite good. This side is not too bad, but one of the big issues you have with these reproduction panels is you can see this corner here is low, but then when we get down here, it's high. This edge is not the same height as what the factory is, and it shows. And that is just part and parcel of what you have to deal with when you've got these reproduction panels. They're never going to be perfect, and it's now time to start trying to tweak everything and make it all fit together. So let's start doing that.
So now I'm happy with my join, I can go through and just clean up all the edges ready for paint. But before I close in this panel, I want to rust protect that corner. So I'm using some POR on these corners, and a tip for young players, make sure you wear gloves with this stuff. It's 3 days later and I still have black fingers that just does not want to come off with anything. But now you can see I am trying to get everything lined up nicely and just doing one tack at a time, just getting everything exactly where I want it, getting both layers perfectly even before I lay a tack. It's tedious, but it's much better to spend the time now than it is later, because it's a lot harder to straighten everything up later and you'll have a lot more repairs to do. And once I've got a tack every couple of centimeters, I'll then go through and try and weld the whole thing together, mostly in one sort of big straight run. It does warp a bit, that's just how it goes, but I grind off the weld and then hammer and dolly and bring it all back to a nice flat level surface, and I get a really good finish that way. And then just hit it with the DA just to make it a bit neater and tidier.
Alright, and this is all looking pretty decent for the time being. I'm pretty happy with how flat this all is, remembering this is going to have a door trim over it eventually. I haven't actually welded this bit together here, as I want to wait until I do the front skin. Everything turned out quite good, except this bit here. There's still quite a step here, and I will sort that out with the hammer and dolly as I go to weld this all together later. But I want to sort out this disgusting front section first, so let's flip it over and have a look at what we're going to do about that.
So now it's basically the same method on the other side. First of all, I work out roughly how much of the door I am going to be replacing, trim down the patch panel, and then cut off a little bit less than what I totally need to cut off so that I can get everything lined up exactly where I want it. Clean it all up, scribe it up, and then trim it to shape, and then I can start tacking it all together. And you can see here I'm doing the same as I did before. Tack, hammer and dolly, try and make sure I keep everything nice and neat and level the whole time until I have got tacks the entire way along. And once I've done that, then I can start welding it all together in hopefully one big long hit.
All right, well, that was a lot of different bits and pieces this week, running around from the Ferrari to the Frankenhauler to my daily driver, a bit of everything, but I've just run out of gas. So I cannot finish this weld. It's a public holiday, and I suppose that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, Henry Leyland was one of the founders of Cadillac and sold it to General Motors in 1909, but he stayed on as an executive until 1917. Henry Leyland and his son Wilfred then started their own company named after the first president that Henry had voted for, Lincoln. The company was financed by securing a $10 million contract to produce Liberty V-12 aircraft engines for World War I, which is about $250 million today. In 1920, the Lincoln Company was reorganized as an automobile manufacturer, but it struggled from the start. And by 1922, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy and it was placed in receivership. Edsel Ford pushed his father to buy it for the bargain price of $8 million, as it was valued at $16 million. This now gave Ford the ability to have a standalone luxury brand to compete with GM's luxury brand, Cadillac. And by the end of 1923, Edsel had turned Lincoln around to run at a profit. One of its innovations was to offer customers vehicles that could have coach-built bodywork, competing with Rolls-Royce and Duesenberg. As such, in 1924, the Lincoln Model L became the first state limousine for a US president, Mr. Calvin Coolidge.
All right, well, that was a week that was a bit all over the place, and we have a dead daily driver. I really don't like working on the daily driver. I generally leave that for others because these modern cars are just horrible to work on, and it's not. I'm more of a fabricator than a mechanic anyway. But the door's coming along nicely. As soon as I get some more gas, I can finish that off, and at least I've got the latches and everything done. So hopefully you enjoyed that one, even though it was a bit of a mess.
Shh, girls.
Quiet. Puppies.
Little dogs are enjoying time in the garage. Okay, like and subscribe. Let us know what you think. As I say every time, I need to change that up, I feel. Patreon, if you want to help them out, see the videos a day early as well.
With no ads.
Very important.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys. Henry Leyland was one of the founders of Cadillac and sold it to Ford Motors in, I don't know what I'm saying, to produce Liberty V-12 engines for aircraft, to compete with GM's luxury brand Cadillac.
Yes, now do it smoothly.
Competing with Rolls-Royce and Duesenberg.
Yes.
I sound like saying Rolls-Royce. As such, in 1924, the Lincoln Model L became the first state limousine. As such, in 1924, the Lincoln limousine